Model Making Guru is sponsored by emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome. Hey everyone, it's Foxx from modelmakingguru.com here. Hello, and welcome back. Yes, it's been a while. I've been away from the bench for quite a while. I do apologise, but I am super grateful for you all for sticking with me. I've done the odd live stream here and there, but in terms of filming stuff, it's been a good few months, and I am so sorry for that. Unfortunately, real life gets in the way, but I do my best. But I've got an enormous backlog of Partworks to get through, and then I've got lots of painting things to do. So hopefully, in the coming weeks and months, I'll get more filming out of the factory and onto your television screens and into your eyeballs. Yes. Now, like I said, I've got a massive backlog of Partworks to do. I've got 6 packs of the DeAgostini Ford GT. I've got, I think, 6 or 7 packs of the DeLorean, and I've still got about 8 packs of the Iron Man, and let's not talk about the X-Wing. Yeah, so we've got lots of things to get through. Today, I'm going to be diving into the Ford GT from DeAgostini. Going to get all 6 packs built up. In this issue, we're just going to go through the latest pack that we were up to, which is pack 43 to 47. And we're going to work our way slowly through these. Now, before we get going, as always, quick disclaimer. I do need to make you aware that this Partwork by DeAgostini has been provided to me free of charge in exchange for me filming the build. Now, that doesn't mean they have any say in the creative process. Everything I say is my opinion, but they are providing it to me free of charge. So big, massive thank you to the guys at DeAgostini. If you want to get this Partwork, there's a link in the description below. As there are links to my Amazon stores where you can pick up some of these tools I'm using, like the screwdrivers and the tidy box and the squishy mat and things like that. So go and check those out. But yes, big thank you to the guys at DeAgostini. In this video, we're going to do these 5 packs. Now, if you've not done this before, if you've not seen a Partwork before, it is the Ford GT40 that they have to call the Ford GT for copyright reasons, because Ford don't own the name GT40. It's basically a 1/8 scale Ford GT40, and you build it up month in, month out. Each month you get 5 magazines, and with the magazines you get parts to add to your build. Now, if you've never done a Partwork before, this is actually quite an easy one. It's not particularly complicated, or it hasn't been so far. It's been nice and simple. Each month you're only getting a few bits and bobs to put together, nothing major. So far all we've built is the cockpit, the floor pan here, and a little tiny bit of the front body shell. That's kind of it, and a wheel, and that's kind of it so far. So it's a nice, easy, relaxing build. If you're new to Partworks, maybe check this one out. It's a nice, interesting way. It's nowhere near as complicated as something like the DeLorean, which requires a degree in complicated wiring, or the Dodge Charger, which requires patience to do all the chassis and everything else. So it's a nice, easy build. Anyway, enough waffle from me. Shut up, Fox. Let's go and get on with the building. We're going to be working with the floor plan because we've got some suspension and goodness to do in these 5 issues. So without further ado, let's go get busy. Okay, so not many steps to this entire issue. First of all, we need to put the radiator pipe onto the floor pan, and you can see here there's a little depressed shape. I'm sure it's not that sad. Little depressed shape for the piping to go in. It just sits in there resting on the 2 little stalks and on the stalk there, and then that is held in place with an FD04 screw. Because it's metal going into metal, I put a little tiny bit of oil on the screw there, and that just goes in there. I like to put a little touch of oil on screws going into metal just to make it a little easier, so I'm not fighting the screw, because the last thing I want to do is have to fight with the screw and thread anything, unfortunately. So that's in there like that, nice and tight. There we go, so that is in place. Next, we have to install the brake fluid brackets, and I hope you can see on here, it's marked with an R for right, because it's left and right ones. And these just go onto these 2 sort of pegs here, the little stubby peg and the big tall one, to go into that hole there. And that peg goes in that hole there, so that just sits on there like that. Bit fiddly, but it will go. There you go, that sits on there. And of course, on the other side, we have the other bracket, which sits the same way, which is that way around. Oops, if I can line them up. Don't be special, Fox. There you go. So that's those 2 pushed in place. And then these 2 again are held in place with an FD04 screw, which again, as it's going into metal, has a tiny touch of oil on it. I've just got standard 3-in-1 oil on these. It's in my Amazon store. Lastly, we need to take these radiator lines, which is a wibbly wobbly rubber bit, and insert them into the pipe here. You've got a little nub in there sticking out. This is the bit that needs to go into that hole there. Now this is quite a tight fit, so it's not likely to come out, but whenever I get things like this where you've got a friction fit like that and it's a cabling or a piping or something, I tend to prefer to use a tiny touch of super glue just to lock them all in place, especially things like brake lines, just because they always tend to pop out. I mean, underneath the car, it's a nightmare. But I don't know where these are going yet. I don't know where these cables are going to go. And I don't want to, because, you know, they might have to go over here and it might need to rotate. So I've not glued it in yet, but when I know where they're going and it's all in place, what I might do is just lock that in place with a tiny touch of super glue, just for the future then, so it never ever comes out. But that is basically issue 43 done. Not a lot to do, and like I said, this particular build, it's a nice sedate Partwork. It's not particularly complicated, at least not so far. So if you want a nice relaxing time, go for that. Anyway, let's put this magazine away. We'll move on to issue 44. Okay, so issue 44, dead simple one, a perfect example of how hassle-free and straightforward this Partwork is and why it's great for beginners. 2 parts, the subframe that goes inside the hood and the bracket or the mount for the spare wheel. This just needs to go onto these 2 pegs. You want to make sure that the little hole is on the right there. Slide that in. That's in there like that. Make sure it's sticking up through the bottom, or the top even, and that is held in place with a single FP01 screw. I've got no oil on the screw because it's going into plastic, so I don't need to worry about it not being able to get through any paint or anything like that. So that is now in place, nice and firm. Now, interesting aside, this is about the 3rd time I filmed this, because the first few times I tried to do this, the screw wouldn't go in. And I thought I hadn't pushed this down all the way and something was fouling the screw. Turns out it wasn't that at all. I don't know if you'll see this, but that's the screw I was trying to use. There's pretty much no thread on it. I know, how bizarre. But this is one of the rules with these Partworks. When you get your bag of screws with each issue, there's usually generally 1 or 2 spare of each kind of screw, usually because you're bound to drop one on the carpet and the carpet monster will eat it. But sometimes, occasionally, you get a malformed screw, like it's got no cross on the top, or it's got no thread, or it's the wrong length, and don't sweat it. That'll go in the bin, but whenever you've finished your build and you've got 1 or 2 screws left over, when you finish each issue, put them in a tidy box, like I've got over there. You can see it's my tidy box, and store them all in the individual screw types. Because if I've got that screw there with no thread on it, if I'd lost the other screw, I've got plenty other old FP01 screws from earlier issues as spares, so I'm never going to be short of screws, so that can go in the bin, and that's all attached. And very occasionally as well, you might find that it tells you to use a certain screw, and sometimes it just doesn't quite work. You might have it'll say use this specific screw and it's a little bit too short, so you can go into your screw box and pick out one of the other screws that's a little bit longer. So that is that, and that is issue 44. Nice and simple. Okay, so issue 45, we're starting to make the suspension now, and we're going to be doing the right front suspension arm. And only a few pieces, but it might be a little bit tricky to install. We've got 2 solid metal pieces of the wishbones, and these quite simply slot into this plastic part, like that, you see. They have to be that way round, yes. Now, the trick is getting them onto the subframe. So let me pull the camera back and we'll see if we can do that. All right, so this needs to go onto the subframe on this side. Now, this is the right suspension arm, and you can see here it's marked with an R. So that just tells us. And what we need to do is get these 3 sockets onto those 3 pegs there, you see. And this is where your Partwork challenge comes in. There's always a bit in a Partwork where you have to do like 4 things at once or defy the laws of gravity or something. So that needs to go on like that. So I can't see what I'm actually doing, which is never a good thing. It needs to lock in place like that. There we go, without the bits falling off. Huge success. I hope that was on camera. The bottom, and that is held in place with 3 FP06 screws. These are the first FP06 screws we've got, and these just go straight into those little sockets. So I shall drop the screw. That's always a winner. There we go. Fox just dropped the screw. I shall get these screwed in. Again, no oil on these screws because it's just going into plastic. And that's done. That's issue 45. You've got the 2 wishbone arms. I've done these fairly tight, a little bit more than finger tight, but not too tight because, again, I don't want to break the plastic. I've done things before where I've screwed something so tight and it's cracked apart. I had this problem with the radiator grille on the Dodge Charger Partwork. The radiator grille, the mounting point was a plastic tab. You put the screw in and it was a friction fit. It just held it in place. But I screwed it so hard it cracked it. And then the radiator was always flippy floppy at that point, which was fun. That was fun. So that's that bit in. On to issue 46. Not surprisingly, you've probably guessed, issue 46 is the wishbone suspension. I can't say wishbone, wishbone suspension on the other side. So, again, get these in place. Make sure these are lined up correctly in the right way around. Take your subframe and then figure out the best way to angle this, because I need to have it that way around. I don't want bits to fall out. Again, this is marked with an L. I don't know if you'll see there. So you can't mess these up. I can mess these up because I'm a professional, but you can't. Slot it into place. There you go. Lovely. And then that again is held in place with 3 FP06 screws. Ooh, got the shakes today. Look at that. Wiggly, wiggly shake time. Again, no oil because they're just going into plastic. And there we go. That's issue 46 done. We've now got the subframe wishbone suspension. I still can't say it. Attached and on and ready. It's sounding a bit like a Christmas decoration of some sort. That's a very weird memory from my deep, dark past. As always, we've got a couple of spare screws, so put these in your screw tidy. There we go. Oh. All those screws were fine, by the way. And then on to issue 47, the last one in this pack. Okay, so for issue 47, we're going to have to bring back the wheel that we built a million years ago in the day of the dinosaurs in issue 2. I've taken the hub off the front just to stop it getting broken. And we need to take the upper and lower suspension arms and put these together. Now, there's actually little nubs on the end of the suspension arm. They locate into the little slots there. There's also a screw in there, but I've just put that in to make it easier. And I would recommend, when you do this, just put the screw in there first before you put these two together. Just makes your life a little easier when you're trying to get it all attached together. So I'll just make sure they go in. Oops, a little bit tricky. Get that in there. Start the screw going in. And make sure that both these suspension arms are flat. Also make sure they're lined up. That one's spinning round. Why are you spinning round? So this one on the left will want to spin round, whereas the one on the right won't. So let's just force that not to do that. There we go. That's it. So that goes in there like that. Hopefully you can see. Make sure this is a metal screw, of course, going into metal, so it's got a little touch of oil on it. I'll make sure it's nice and tight. There we go. So yeah, you want to make sure both these are flat, because if these are facing that way, it won't fit on the subframe. So that's now that done. We now need to attach this to the subframe. Next, we're taking part 47A, which is the fat boy. You get 4 of these, 2 fat and 2 thin. This is the fat one compared to the thin one, you see. This needs to sit on the left side, on this side, suspension arm, and you put the C-clip there, and that just sits on there like that. It's a tight fit, and you have to hope and pray that it doesn't break when you push it on. There we go. It does show you using tweezers, but trust me, you ain't going to get that on with a pair of tweezers. You'll be throwing it everywhere. And 47B, the thin and longer one of those, goes onto this little recessed bit here, this little gap there. So that needs to sit like that. So I'll just get my finger there. Again, firm but careful, because you don't want to break the little C-clamp. So that goes like that. And you can see how this is going to go now. It's going to go in there like that. That's almost rude. I'll stop doing that. You slide these two together so they go in like that. And you have to hope that it all comes good. So you've got your nice bit of suspension there with a nice springy spring. So now attaching the wheel to the subframe. Bit tricky. You kind of got to hold everything in both hands. A bit like that. I'd recommend doing the top and then the bottom. You need to slot that into there and that bottom one into there. So I'd recommend doing it this way. Do the top one first, because then you can coordinate all your hands. Get it like that. You've got to hold everything in place so it doesn't explode. Let's just try, actually let's try if we can get both in. Get both in like that. Now we've got to coordinate getting that screw in that hole. It's not quite lined up, but let's see if we can force it. Let's see if that can go in. Go on, you can do it. Can you do it? I'd like you to do it. I think we're in. Okay, I was going to suggest actually just keeping the bottom bit out completely, but that seems to have worked. So that's an FD06 in the top, and it'll be an FD07 in the bottom. Just go in there. The FD07 is slightly longer than the FD06, that's why it's a different screw. Oops. No, you're not going to go in, and it's come apart. There we go. Come on. In you go. Just get it lined up. And there you go, that's that done. The reason I was struggling with that screw, it's just a very tight hole that it was going into, and it wasn't quite pushing its way through to the gap between the two parts of the arm. So all I did was take this wishbone arm out and just pull the screw back a few turns, push it forward a few turns, back a few turns, and just to widen the hole and make sure it fitted properly. Once I'd done that, it all went together like a dream. So we now have an attached wheel onto the subframe. The suspension is nice and springy and light. It's actually quite interesting compared to my Dodge Charger, which was massively rock hard suspension. You could barely move the wheel. This thing's all over the shop and it's quite nice. So that's that one done, and that actually concludes magazine 47, which also concludes this entire pack. There you go. I told you it was a nice simple build, this one. But that's going to do us for this video. Thank you massively for watching. I'll be back with the next pack in the next video, probably the next few days. But until then, don't forget, if you'd like to keep this channel alive, I do this for a living and I depend on my supporters. So if you want to help keep the channel alive, help me, keep doing these videos, please consider becoming a patron or a channel member. You can go to patreon.com/modelmakingguru and become a patron. Support me there. Or you can press the join button underneath my videos to become a channel member and support me there. Or least of all, just remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Again, a big massive thank you to all my supporters and to the guys at DeAgostini and guys and girls at DeAgostini who sent me this partwork free of charge. Big thank you to them for making this even remotely possible. But until next time, I shall say take care of yourselves. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Adios, amoebas.